The Red Eye Radio podcast is a service of Freightliner and Detroit.
Now it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Pilot Flying J Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we move into a Thursday, Gary, how are you?
Well, all I got to say is we're not going to see infrastructure for a while.
You probably can't go down two tracks. You can go down the investigation track, and you can go down the investment track, or the track of let's get things done for the American people. I love the American people. Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, I want to do infrastructure. I want to do it more than you want to do it. I'd be really good at that. That's what I do. The whole thing with Russia was a hoax as it relates to the Trump administration and myself. It was a total, horrible thing that happened to our country. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. We've been doing this since I've been president, and actually, the crime was committed on the other side. We'll see how that all turns out. I hope it turns out well.
And this after Nancy Pelosi, before their infrastructure meeting, accused the president of a cover-up. Mm-hmm. And so I think what probably happened in the White House is they see the direction of where the momentum is going. You and I are having a discussion during our pre-show meeting. I think that there is the mindset that is growing every single day that the Democrats believe, for a number of reasons that we'll get into, that we need to do impeachment ASAP. I think that they're concerned that if they let this thing drag out for a year and then either successfully impeach the president a year from now or do not successfully impeach the president a year from now, it will affect the swing districts. I think they wish to get it out of the way. I think the leadership probably is coming to the conclusion that they can't stop the Ocasio-Cortez and the Representative Tlaib and Omar left, very far left portions of the Democrat Party that now control the Democrat Party, that they can't stop them. And, you know, you and I look at this and say, well, this could be devastating to the Democrats, as I'm sure Nancy Pelosi is thinking. And as I told you during our pre-show meeting, you and I, a long time ago, you and I were having the discussion as to why Democrats always throw the race card at people on the right, conservatives and libertarians, that they always accuse them of being racist. And it always befuddled us, because if you actually look at it, the people that practice identity politics are the ones on the left. The bigots are on the left. They're all on the left, because they're the ones who claim that if you are a particular physical characteristic or sexuality, you must think and act this way, otherwise you're not genuine and authentic. It comes from their side. It does not, anymore come from the right. It comes from the left. And one of the things we were always confused and saying, why is that the first thing that comes out of their mouth? And then we realized we don't think alike. And we have to understand and we have to realize that they don't think like we do. And therefore, they believe that we do. I mean, they're bigots, so they believe that we're bigots. And you and I came to the conclusion, wow, that's what happens. I think that when we analyze things, we think, well, all people must think like we think. And as I told you during our pre-show meeting, when you understand that because it doesn't seem to make there is no reason political. It doesn't seem to be any upside of impeaching the president because number one, he hasn't done anything worth impeachment. If you look at the history of impeachment in this country, he hasn't done anything. They don't have an argument. I mean, Chris Cuomo probably made the best argument that Democrats have. I'm not saying it's a good argument, but the best Democrats have. And I'm basically paraphrasing here the analysis of it. Chris Cuomo basically said, well, if the positive for doing impeachment would be we'd be able to investigate the president and find out if he did anything wrong. So the best reason for impeachment is to find out whether they should impeach the president.
Right.
And so it doesn't make any sense to us when we view it. We say, well, you're taking too much of a chance. You have to realize this is the party that is trying to convince the American public that a man can be a woman whenever they wish to be. This is the party where you have 11 of the candidates running for president of the United States who endorses Ocasio-Cortez's insanity of a Green New Deal and a government which would require a government takeover of industry and manufacturing in the United States. In essence, transform the United States into no longer being what the United States is about. This is a Democrat Party that no longer believes in the First Amendment to the United States. They don't believe in freedom of speech. They don't believe in freedom of religion. They don't believe in the Second Amendment. They don't believe a presumption of innocence if it's somebody on the other side. They don't believe in the basic tenets and laws of the United States. They don't believe in the common sense that created the Constitution. They don't believe in the ideology of the Constitution of the United States, which is let's ensure that the tyranny of the tyranny of the majority does not oppress the minority. They don't believe in any of these things that have been long held in this country for over 240 years. So why would we be surprised that they're thinking about the politics of going down the impeachment road when what they believe already is completely insane, delusional, and not at all the basic tenets of what built the United States of America. And and that's the thing. I fall into the same thing. I start analyzing, well, they can't go down this road because it's, well, wait a minute, Gary, you're thinking that they're thinking the way that you are, and that's a mistake that I think we all make, myself included. We make that mistake of thinking that somehow, down deep somewhere, there is some critical thinking skills. And there's not.
Well, I guess my question would be, how many Claire McCaskill Democrats are there in the House? Right?
Yeah.
That are willing to vote now, or could they, and this is another possibility, could they be pressured by leadership? If Nancy Pelosi wants to move, then it's over, then they're going to move on it. I mean, it's a done deal.
I don't see how you see, and I think yesterday when she came out and said that, a cover-up.
Right.
Now, whether it was a slip of the tongue or whatever, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's out there that that's what the Speaker of the House has said.
Right.
You have just emboldened the far left that controls the Democrat Party to say, wow, we got her moving in the right direction. Because what you wish to do is create this avalanche where inside of your party there is no other talk except for pro-impeachment. Well, you just gave the justification to the delusional, over-the-top, driven by their emotion and rage and hatred over what? Can't figure it out because don't try to do any critical thinking on that one. But it's the fact that the insanity has just had more fuel thrown on the fire. with her doing that. I don't see it. I don't see how here's my point. I don't see Nancy Pelosi's exit ramp on this now after yesterday. I just don't see it.
Here's the coverage from The Hill based on that, her, the whole cover-up thing, and it being her mentioning that it could be an impeachable offense. At the end of it here, and this comes from who did the work here at The Hill, Christina Marcos, thehill.com. And this was yesterday afternoon. By the way, we have to give the timeline of every story because everything moves so quickly right now.
Right.
But this was, she posted this at 3:03 p.m. Eastern with no updates since then, according to the website. But again, from thehill.com. While Pelosi took a sharper tone against Trump publicly during a closed-door meeting with the House Democrats, she gave the floor to a handful of chairmen who have backed her methodical approach, being, in other words, not impeaching. Lawmakers suggested the caucus remained largely behind her approach despite a push from some members to begin an impeachment inquiry. All right, that is just a very simple, generic observation. It really doesn't give us direction because at the end of it, she will be the one to move or not, and we don't know. There's, if she's giving the floor to this caucus that is behind her in not impeaching, then it only means that she was pulling back for the moment. It doesn't mean that she's pulling back.
Well,
forever.
I mean, this is, again, you said look at the timeline, because the timeline. The timeline of what she will say 1 second is different than what she will say the second,
right.
The next second or the next hour.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have to look at it in its totality from where we were 2 weeks ago to where we are now. What it looks like is happening is 2 steps forward, 1 step backward.
Yeah,
2 steps forward, 1 step backwards.
She's shaking hands on both sides.
But if you look at it overall, we are much closer to the Democrats wanting to impeach now. I mean, it is growing. I mean, I just saw the article, Bernie Sanders might endorse impeachment now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're seeing, you're seeing that come on. And understand, I do think there is also a train of thought, even from those wary about it, that they believe what's coming down from the Inspector General will be extremely damning towards the Obama administration and those in the Obama administration, and might taint also the momentum of Joe Biden. Because Biden was I don't care, but you're part of that administration. You get tied to it depending on how high up it goes. But I look at what we know so far, and you see the reaction of Brennan and Clapper and Comey, and you see, Baker out there on a tour right now. I was brought up yesterday. Baker's out there on a tour, and he's in the middle of all of this. Everybody's trying to get in front of what is coming down the pike, and I do believe that there is a mindset that has been discussed inside Democrat circles that we've got to taint the president first before all this comes out, because if there are indictments that come out down the road, it might be 6 months to a year from now. Let's permanently taint the administration now, that anything that they touch is from an impeached president's administration. Again, he's not going to be removed from office. They know that.
Right.
So why would you do it? It's because you believe that the politics coming down the pike, because of, as the president said, if there was wrongdoing, it was on the other side, as we all know. The Russian collusion came from the Democrats, as we know. It didn't come from the Republicans. Mm-hmm. And they know it. They know how that narrative, if organized by the Republicans, can be so damaging to them in 2020, that part of the mindset is we've got to taint the president first.
Well, okay, so Mr. President, when you said I'll declassify it, I'll hold on to it, and if they come at me, I'm going to essentially keep this and use it against them if they come at me.
Well, they're coming at you now. We said this a couple weeks ago. Don't be surprised. There are no limits as to where the Democrats will go. After the Mueller report, and you saw their reaction. We said, expect it to be absolute insanity now, and it's exactly what we thought it would be.
And I think, too, how do you cover up an IG report? Well, in terms of getting the media's attention, it will be impeachment. Because impeachment will be the story. It won't matter what Barr's doing. It won't matter what a federal prosecutor is doing. It won't matter what the IG says. If they're on impeachment officially, if they're moving on impeachment, that's where the liberal media will be.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. 866-90-Red-Eye. You know, you look at this, and you look at the two former impeachments of U.S. presidents, whether it was Andrew Johnson, and that was because he defied a law that Congress passed. It said that he couldn't fire his Secretary of War, and he just said that's unconstitutional. You can't tell me what to do. That's always gone down as an impeachment that's like, whoa. Where did that come from? Because that impeachment was based on a Separation of Powers Act and had nothing to do with any crime that had been committed. You look at the next impeachment, which would have been Bill Clinton, and I know Representative Cohen the other day said he was impeached because of sex. He was not. He was impeached because, and nobody's debating it, he lied before a grand jury in a sexual harassment case. That's why. And so, those are the two. Anybody tell me why they would be impeaching President Trump? Right. The only thing we have so far in the last week is Representative Cohen because he's raping America. What does that mean? The raping of America is what Cohen said. Why would you be doing it? Oh, because is the official reason going to be because of executive privilege? Will it be a separation of powers, not a high crimes and misdemeanor, not a criminal act being done in any way, but will this be the second time in history that a separation of powers, which again historians look back at the Andrew Johnson one and go, whoa, that's just pretty bogus. And I think historians would look the same way here because that's what Democrats are basically saying, that the president must submit to the will of Congress. That the presidency has, think about this, the presidency has no power.
Right.
Well, the presidency does have power. They are a branch of the federal government. I know. I'm sorry. I'm getting into talking about branches of government and separation of powers, which the majority of Americans have no idea what we're talking about. So,
just the basics. Just remember there are three. We'll start there.
Okay.
We'll start with counting. For Travel Centers of America, here is your forecast.
There is at least a 50-50 chance, if not greater, of precipitation for every state in the U.S. today. In the Deep South and Florida, that could come as a result of late afternoon thunderstorms. In the West, Wyoming, Nevada, Montana, Idaho, that would come in the higher elevations as snowfall. Lower elevations could see rain. Central Washington and Oregon under the chance of some rain today. The best amounts of rainfall, unfortunately, come in the Midwest. Parts of eastern Nebraska, most of Iowa, central Kansas, and western Oklahoma are under the threat of more severe storms, and heavy rain and flooding will persist. Not great news for the Midwest, as we'll see a series of showers persist through the early part of next week, and over the course of the next 7 days, as much as 5 to 7 inches of additional rainfall. Your national forecast from Red Eye Radio, I'm meteorologist John Trout.
Join the Mind Meld. 1-866-90-RED-EYE. Back to Gary McNamara and Eric Harley.
And good morning. Well, at least one thing good comes out of this. No infrastructure plan.
Woohoo!
No blowing and flushing down the toilet $2 trillion.
Woohoo! All right. At least for now.
Well, at least for now. That's if there's one good in all of this, that's it. I don't want to hear, this infrastructure, we need it. No, they did that, $1 trillion, and flushed it down the toilet. The Democrats did it. President's not going to be able to control where the infrastructure money goes.
No.
It's going to be Republicans, and Democrats are going to have their huge input in it because they control the House.
Yeah. If they move toward impeachment, if they do a vote on this and they actually get there on the vote, my question is, what then? I mean, think about this. You walk through the timeline. They want this. If they're going to do it, I agree with you on this part that if they're going to do it, they believe they need to do it now, get it behind them, wash their hands of it, and try and move on. But what are you going to do? It's not like they're going to play nice next year and cooperate on legislative issues.
No. It's if they go through with the impeachment, it's all done.
It's over.
I don't see Trump agreeing with them on anything. It just becomes a political war for the next. It's always a political war, but this becomes a unique political war following, post-impeachment. Mm-hmm. And it will be up to the voters. But I do think, I really do think, and when Pelosi came out yesterday, she's trying to, play the, ride or walk the tightrope on this one. But when she came out yesterday and talked about, possible impeachment and the Trump covering up, and again, nobody can tell you what he's covering up.
Right.
The argument is, the only argument that they have is, I'll look at the two arguments that have come out this week. That Representative Cohen, Trump needs to be impeached because of the raping of America. Mm-hmm. No idea what that means.
Right.
Okay. That's emotional rage. That's the real reason. They're trying to make it a separation of powers that Trump must have all of his people testify and exactly the way that they wish him to testify. And that's bogus right there. And you notice who they're hitting. William Barr, of course. When they hit William Barr, he said, I'll testify before Congress. Mm-hmm. I'll testify before the House, the members of the House. I'll testify before the senators. I'll testify before the Congress people, members of the House. I'm not going to testify in front of your lawyers. Or, excuse me, I'm not going to testify or answer questions from your lawyers. I'll answer them from you. Now, the lawyers can still be there.
Sure.
He said, nope, don't have to do it. So there is they can't make the accusation as Beto O'Rourke did yesterday, and he won't testify. Yeah, he will. Mm-hmm. He'll testify before Congress. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is, let's hit his, and I want to make sure, the people that are closest to him, his own staff. They know they're not going to testify. And so what they're saying is McGahn has to testify, Hope Hicks has to testify. There's a couple of other former advisors close to the president that they wish to testify before Congress. They don't have to. They have absolute executive privilege there. It's just like we said yesterday to make it simple so people understand it. The president cannot call Gerald Nadler before him and have Gerald Nadler answer questions to him. Now, the president's attorney general can do an investigation on Nadler. Mm-hmm. Nadler cannot tell the president and force the president or any of his close aides around him to testify. Nadler can have his department heads testify. Absolutely. That can be done. Anything that the House has oversight over, yeah. He can demand that they testify before Congress. Has there ever been tested whether he can get them to testify before other people instead of Congress? Why don't you testify before our attorneys? No. And the Barr said no, to that. Mm-hmm. But as you know, you have those department heads that are always testifying before Congress in any administration because Congress controls the purse strings and Congress has oversight over many of those committees. So, or many of those departments. So that's fine. We've talked about that before. But for the president, no. So the cover-up is based on the fact that the president won't concede to their will completely, even though they have no constitutional authority to demand that the president do so. And that's what they probably plan to impeach him on, unless, as Chris Cuomo was trying to make the point, well, if they do the impeachment, there'll be an inquiry, and then they'll be able to investigate everything about going on with the president, and then they may be able to find information to impeach him on. So the impeachment process would be to try to find a reason to impeach the president.
To open up another investigation.
Which, by the way, that would be a first, because that goes way beyond what the impeachment of Andrew Jackson, which was based on a separation of powers argument totally. That's what that was on. And so they're trying to make a separation of powers. They're trying to make a separation of powers argument here and trying to keep, the suspicion that, well, if he won't let everybody testify, then he must be hiding something, therefore he should be impeached. Mm-hmm. That's where it seems to be going. I know it doesn't make sense to anybody, but nothing they do. You cannot. The mistake that I make occasionally is we think they think like we do, and they don't. Mm-hmm. They don't. They don't believe in the Constitution of the United States. They don't believe in due process. We've talked about this. They don't believe in the First Amendment. They don't believe in freedom of religion. They don't believe in the Second Amendment. They don't believe in a presumption of innocence unless it's their guy. The other guy doesn't get the presumption of innocence. We know that. We know that 11 of their presidential candidates endorse the radical proposals of AOC on the Green New Deal, which the only way you get there would be government takeover of industry and business in this country completely, which then you're in a socialist communist nation, which is completely against the tenets of what the United States of America is about. They don't believe in the United States of America, so they have no problem trying to destroy it from within and abusing the Constitution of the United States and abusing their power. They don't care about that. It's the last thing they care about. To them, I actually think like impeachment is a nothing burger to them compared to the other stuff that they're trying to convince the American public of, right down to the fact that a man can be a girl.
Yeah, I guess the only question I have is for those in the Midwest, those in those swing districts. Is there enough pressure to be put on them? Do they succumb to the pressure from party leadership? Or do they think like Claire McCaskill, I need to make it clear in my district leading into the next election cycle that I'm not one of these crazy Democrats?
Well, I think it's important that you bring that up, Eric, because that goes back to the fact that they understand it. Even Democrats understand that there's a significant portion of people that are not Republicans that look at the Democrats and believe that's why Claire McCaskill, as a Democrat, did that ad. Mm-hmm. Because that's what's, and I think when you said this at that time, you said they used the term crazy Democrats. And you said this had to come up in the polling. Because to use that specific word, not radical Democrats, but crazy Democrats.
Right.
I'm not a far left Democrat. I'm not a crazy Democrat. And You said that at the time that had to be coming up in the polls, that independents had to be saying, these Democrats are crazy. Mm-hmm. Well, you think about it now, they're more crazy than they've ever been.
Well, and so here's the next question. To counter that thought, for them, for a lawmaker, is impeachment so crazy when they know it's not going to mean removal from office? for them, even in the swing districts? Do they say, well, yeah, but it's not the same even as Kavanaugh, as what we did with Kavanaugh. It'll be a process. If they think that, here's what I think they're missing. If they do have that mindset, what they're missing is how many American people believe impeachment means eventual removal from office.
You know, I thought about that too. I just thought, since the majority of Americans don't even understand they can't tell you the three branches of government. That's the majority, roughly 3/4. It means the majority of Americans don't know how the government actually runs,
right,
and why it's set up the way that it is set up. And I thought about that yesterday too. I said, how many Americans have no idea what impeachment is?
Right. And
they do believe it is removal from office.
Because if they believe this would be the risk for those in those swing districts that worry that, well, my district may vote for me, but it also may vote for Trump. Okay? Or I could be on the verge, more importantly, because they're always thinking of me, I could be on the verge, and there could be a tipping. Right now, we could be at that threshold of a tipping point where the polls are mixed, and I have no idea going into next election cycle. But if they look at that as what it is, impeachment, it's not a small thing. It is a big deal, even though it doesn't mean removal from office. It necessarily. It is the question of what they believe the voters believe.
Well, it is the beginning of the process to remove a president from office. It is part of the process of removing a president from office. But we're sort of thinking, what will they think when it comes to vote time, instead of the fact that before we even get to the vote time, there's a small number of people that are involved that can get the inquiry going and get to the impeachment vote. And that's the part that I think is going to cause a nightmare political scenario, is an impeachment inquiry, the questions, the public, because that's what they want. They want the public hearings that will be held on the reason for impeaching the president, and they want to do as much of that. If they're going to do it, they want to do as much of that as they can, I believe, in the next 6 months. They want to get it out of the way. I don't think that they wish to be discussing impeachment. This is actually, I believe, what they're concerned with more, not the actual vote, but those swing districts are saying, if you're going to do it now and get it out of the way. Either impeach him or don't impeach him, get it out of the way and give us a year before the election time, because I think that the majority of Americans will disagree on it, especially when they can't come up with the reason. But I think part of the inquiry is to try to find a reason. Remember, everything now is a fishing expedition to find something on Trump. They don't have anything. Well, they're trying to find something on Trump, which, by the way, changes everything. Let's say Biden becomes president. You don't think they're going to be investigating? The Republicans won't go crazy if they have either the Senate or the House. If Biden wins, you don't think they're going to be going after his relationship with his son, and his son with his dealings with Ukraine and China and everything else? That's going to be all over the place.
All right,
it's a new day if they impeach Trump.
Well, and if they impeach Trump, they move, and do they know that people are going to be expecting his removal from office? A number of people will be. It's not going to happen because nothing's going to happen in the Senate.
Right. And when that doesn't happen,
and when
Democrats
happen,
will be ticked off.
That will be a loss for the Democrats because you impeached him, but it doesn't mean removal from office? Really? Asked the ignorant American voter.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Hurley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Coming up following the top of the hour, as we talk about momentum with the Democrats now leading to impeachment. or at least the impeachment inquiry. I think they're on that path is where they're going. We've talked about it here this hour. We'll get to more of it and get your calls and comments here. Other news out there, the latest polls. Another poll out there, Americans feel good about the economy and give the president the credit. The racist attacks on Ben Carson. That coming up. The new liberal analysis of Pete Buttigieg, and I guarantee you will love this one. The story that is a non-story about the Pentagon and the UFOs. That was the dumbest story of the day yesterday. The Pentagon's still investigating UFOs. They went to the Pentagon, and the Pentagon said, yes, when something is unidentified in the skies over America, we wish to find out what it is because it could be one of our enemies. Duh.
It's kind of the Pentagon's job, is it not?
Yeah.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.
You don't have to be a big fleet to get big fleet savings on tires, retreads, and tire services. As a member of the Michelin Advantage program, fleets and owner-operators can enjoy competitive program pricing on Michelin tires and retreads, not to mention access to online business tools and training opportunities. Plus, Michelin will waive the dispatch fee for every Michelin on-call emergency roadside service call. And the best part? Membership is free. Signing up is simple and takes a few quick minutes. So simple that small fleet owner Kevin Rutherford called it a no-brainer. He said, quote, "There's no downside. It's free to join, and I just wouldn't run my business without it." You can join Kevin and thousands of other fleet owners and owner-operators today by signing up for the Michelin Advantage program at MichelinTruck.com/advantage.
Now it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Pilot Flying J Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, 866-90-RED-EYE. I'm Gary McNamara along with Eric Harley. Welcome.
This hour brought to you by Freightliner. Run smart, helping you run more efficiently is Freightliner's #1 goal.
I got to see if I can find the audio cut of Jake Tapper asking yesterday, do you think Trump is daring House Dems to impeach him? How's this on Trump? The impeachment's being brought up by Democrats. Now it's Trump's taunting the Democrats to impeach him. I love that one. They were even talking about that on Fox. Like, why are you wasting your time on that? Democrats are the ones that proposes.
Right. This isn't the president that's going to stand down. This is exactly what he's going to do. This is a president who loves the battle, especially when he knows he's in the right.
Yeah.
So I don't see this. I don't see this. We talked about during the whole Mueller thing, he didn't flinch. He's still not flinching.
But this isn't on none of this for Tapper to even bring that up. And it was brought up the other day. You think Trump wants to be impeached? It's got nothing to do with Trump.
Mm-mm. He didn't create this.
This is the behavior of the Democrats, which they somehow, because I do think that there are some in the media that are like, well, you may not want to go down this. You really don't have the evidence to do it. So they got to find a way to twist it and turn it in their I don't know, manic minds. I don't know another word that I can come up with to say, okay, this must be Trump's fault. He's goading them into doing it. The Democrats are just stupid idiots, and Trump is leading them around.
Right.
It was all like that. You and I used to talk about this during the Bush administration, that Bush is an idiot, yet he has manipulated all the oil companies to his will worldwide. But he's a complete idiot and a moron. That him and Cheney have been involved in a conspiracy to become rich, and they use the executive branch to do it. But they're idiots! And Trump, who is a complete idiot and moron, had the sophistication to collude with the Russians to hack the election, and even though the Mueller investigation went through every little possible piece of what they thought might be evidence, it turned out not to be evidence, and every single allegation and every single rumor they covered, they couldn't find it. This idiot and moron Trump was able to beat them.
You know, here's the thing is honestly, you've got to ask the question, because when you say impeachment to a lot of people, do a man on the street thing and ask them about impeachment. What does that mean? Well, it doesn't matter what it actually has meant, what it actually does mean. It's what they think it means or what they want it to mean. And for those who hate Trump, what are they going to say? It means he's going to be gone. But he's not.
No.
So they come out on the other side of this, let's say, I don't know, in the fall.
Yeah, because it would have to. None of this could happen until the fall. I mean, the summer break's coming up.
Yeah,
they hate Trump, but they're not going to keep Congress in session to do the inquiry and impeachment during the summer vacation.
So they come out of this in the fall. We are well into the 2020 season. Mm-hmm. And what's on the other side? Still president. Still running for president. Well, I could see it. I can see it right now. Well, he was impeached. What do you think? I could see a man on the street, somebody from one of the critical thinking news organizations going, man on the street, well, are you glad that Trump has been impeached? Yeah, what now? Well, now he's going to be removed from office. He'll no longer be president. Well, actually, it doesn't mean that. What? And so you have another loss for the Democrats.
Yeah,
effectively.
That's a good point.
Because tell me how this affects Donald Trump himself. I mean, I know he's going to be an impeached president, but tell me otherwise, how does it affect him? They're attempting to hang a cloud where there is no evidence of wrongdoing at all. None. This is based on Nadler issuing subpoenas where no one is showing up. This kind of challenge, which was an impossible challenge each time. And you're not going to get somebody to show up when you're asking them, especially the Attorney General. You're asking them to break the law. You're asking them to do something that is not within their role.
Right, and you think about this, that they wish to impeach the president because the Attorney General will not break the law. The Attorney General will not testify to other people besides Congress, which he is willing to testify before Congress, but not other people that they determine that he should testify in front of. And the fact that he will not let his former closest advisors claiming executive privilege go in front of Congress, which the precedent on that is a very, very long precedent, which they have no case whatsoever. As for high crimes and misdemeanors, there are none. You had Representative Cohen the other day come out and scream and yell. I guess he also did an interview where they said, where's a legal basis on this? None of us are lawyers. We don't need a legal basis. This is impeachment. There is no legal basis. And he's the one that said Trump needs to be impeached because they impeached Clinton for sex, which is a lie, as we all know. They didn't impeach him for sex. I don't know anywhere where it said, oh, he had sex, and therefore we have to impeach him.
Right.
I got impeached for sex.
Right.
No, you got impeached for lying to a grand jury. And, when it comes to the president, as Cohen screamed apparently in the meeting that everybody covered, if they can impeach Clinton for sex, we can impeach Trump for the raping of America.
What does that mean?
It has no meaning. It's just emotion. It's It's rage is what it is. They wish to impeach because of rage. You don't have any kind of separation of powers argument even here. That's what they're going to try to use. You know, in the Andrew Jackson case, they said he couldn't fire. The Congress passed a law stating he couldn't fire his Secretary of War. Because what are you talking about? It's my department. I can fire the Secretary of War. You don't get to tell me. It's sort of like the War Powers Act, where Congress has put all these stipulations in law that the president must abide by these rules and regulations that Congress sets down. Every administration has said, that's baloney. You don't get to pass a law to tell me how to run the executive branch. Only a constitutional amendment can do so. That was basically Andrew Jackson, in a nutshell, his argument. You can't do that. And so he fired the Secretary of War, and Congress impeached him for that. And they said, we passed the law, and you didn't abide by the law. I don't need to abide by the law. Congress doesn't set the law of the executive branch. The Constitution does. And so what they're trying to say, well, I guess, you know, like I said, the argument is raping of America, a cover-up of a crime that nobody can even figure out what the general allegation of a crime is, and the fact that they believe that executive power doesn't exist for the president, or they are changing. They are changing the definition of executive privilege to suit their definition at this time, to suit their narrative. That's about it. There's no high crimes and misdemeanors here at all.
No.
This would be purely political, which, if you've listened to the show, we have said that's what impeachment is. It is not a criminal, and that's the Democrats, you know, are jumping on that now. Well, it's not legal. It's political, and so we can do what we want to do. Well, yeah, there's always the political ramifications. That's the other check and balance of an impeachment or removal from office is, okay, what does the public then think at that point? Let us head to you. We go to John in Oak Grove, Missouri. John, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Good evening, guys. How are you? Or good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to say before I make my comment. I was from Portland, Oregon, and I worked for Freightliner Corporation, manufacturing for 28 years. Darn good company. Okay. My comment is that the Democrats are running like a chicken with their head cut off. They looked at the map in 2016, seen it was all red. They're scared to death. You know, what is the reason why Nancy Pelosi and Schumer went to the White House to talk about infrastructure? Why in the heck don't they just pass the bill and let it go through the Senate and let the president either veto it or sign it? This is nothing. They are imploding. They are imploding. The gross, domestic product is up. Obama said, where's his magic wand? How is he going to do this? You know where it is?
Yes, where he said, where are these jobs going to come from? Well, as we said, though, with the Obama administration, their whole point was, remember that week in August of 2016 where it was like, okay, who's going to try to destroy manufacturing the most?
Right.
They seemed to be a race that week when Bernie came out and said he wanted to get rid of the trucking jobs in order to have everything done by and managed by government by rail. And then Hillary Clinton came out and said she wanted to destroy the coal jobs. And then Obama, by the end of that week, came out and said, well, we're not going to drill in the Atlantic, even though my own State Department said it's environmentally okay to do so. We are going to not do that because of climate change. And we said, wow, coal jobs, oil jobs, and trucking jobs. That was a great, and that was in the middle of a presidential campaign. And they all came out the fact and said, let's destroy manufacturing in the United States.
Right.
We've often said this. That's the problem with the Democrats. they can't be for manufacturing because manufacturing pollutes.
They've got to shut it down.
So they've got to shut it down. And we said, where do you go from that point? That's why you had Obama saying, well, we can't create any of these jobs. Yeah, because you don't want a manufacturing base.
Right. It's clear they don't want to, they don't want a booming economy. They want people dependent on government, and then they want to blame the private sector for their actions. And then, when he's out of office, what did he say? Oh, well, the largest increase in oil production happened under my watch. He tried to take credit for it.
But that is a great point. If the Democrats really want infrastructure, they can just pass a bill on their own.
Yeah, John, I think that's a great idea. If they want it to happen, make it happen.
Right.
There's a way to do that. You know what lawmakers can do? They can make law.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Tips from J.J. Keller and Associates Incorporated on inspections. Results are revealed. Now what? After the inspection is complete, do you know what happens next? The answer depends on the results of the inspection. The inspector will hand you a report and explain any violations. You're required to turn it in when you return to the next company facility. If you won't be able to visit one within 24 hours, you should fax or mail it. But what happens if you or your vehicle is ruled out of service? If a violation is deemed so unsafe that it must be corrected before you can continue, be sure to know what your company's process is to deal with the situation. Know who must be notified and how repairs will be handled. If you pass a comprehensive inspection, congratulations. You'll receive a CVSA decal and you're on your way. But you should also be prepared just in case things don't go as planned. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates Incorporated. Visit us on jjkeller.com.
This has been the Meritor Driver Report, brought to you by Pilot Flying J, Shell Rotella, and Meritor Aftermarket. Run with the bull.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. What I really find interesting is you had Bernie Sanders also saying, well, it may now be time to impeach. And let me just very quickly here get the quote. Let me see. The quote from Bernie Sanders. To be very honest with you, I'm not sure that this president may not want to be impeached. That seems to be a narrative after they talk about the fact that maybe we should impeach. That's almost the next thing out of their mouth. That's a talking point. Mm-hmm. Why is that a talking point? What do they believe they're getting out of saying, it may well be time to impeach Trump? Yes, because there could be a cover-up going on. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure that he may not want to be impeached. Mm-hmm. What's that about? They believe that they'll be able to convince the people in the middle that, look, this is what Trump wants, so it's okay.
Right.
What's the strategy behind it? It seems that narrative now, especially the last couple of days, keeps coming out. And so I wonder psychologically, what are they trying to sell, and who are they trying to sell it to?
Are they building up are they hedging here? Because the play could be that, okay, look, if it comes back negative, if we challenge the president is challenging us back, go ahead, impeach. And at the end of it, it goes nowhere, and we fail, which they will, because it's going to go nowhere, and they'll fail. Even if it passes, they'll fail.
So are they talking to the far left,
or are they
Democrats,
or are they talking to the people in the middle, saying, "Look, the guy asked for it. He said impeach, so we impeached."
Or are they trying to say that maybe we should impeach, but you know something, it's what Trump wants, and so we're not going to give Trump what he wants?
Well, what you said a moment ago, they're even saying it right now. Well, it doesn't mean, that it's not a legal move. It's a political move. They're rebranding it, and I suspect they're doing it for those people in those swing districts. where they're saying, look, this is just to kind of put a stamp on him to say we disapprove of this behavior. It's not going to do anything to him, so don't worry. We're not trying to remove him from office. Why else would you say that? Why else would you come out and say, yeah, we're going to do it, but it's not really anything. It's not a real legal move. He's not going to jail. Why would you do that? If you're pandering to the far left, you're screaming, we're not going to stop until he's out of office.
Which then somebody's going to ask you, well, then why are you doing it?
Then why are you doing it?
If there is no purpose to it, if there's no purpose to it, why are you doing it? That's what I would ask.
They have to play both sides here. The far left wants him gone. He's not going to be. Unless he loses in November. And the middle, if it's a mix. Some may not care if he's impeached. Some may care greatly if he's impeached and may be motivated by it. And I think that's where they are right now. This is why party leadership up until Wednesday afternoon wasn't saying this.
Yeah, I think they're what it is to me, because there's so many messages coming out, is even the Democrat leadership is trying to figure out where this rage inside the Democrat Party, the left that's controlling the Democrat Party, how to handle rage. Mm-hmm. How do you handle rage that's incoherent?
Right, yeah.
Pockets of civilization, you can listen live on our app, in your app store, or RedEyeRadioShow.com. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Carly. I'm Gary McNamara, 86690 Red Eye.
This hour brought to you by Freightliner. Run smart, helping you run more efficiently is Freightliner's #1 goal. Check out our podcast. This program, we podcast it every day. So if you miss a show, if you're away for a while, maybe you're on vacation, maybe you have to go to a graduation, for whatever reason, if you miss the program or part of the program, we do podcast it. We do podcast it every day. You can go to RedEyeRadioShow.com and click on demand and check it out. We also have the Extra Mile podcast, where we're hanging out with people from the trucking industry. And, just so much great news coming out of the trucking industry regarding nonprofits like my friends at the St. Christopher Truckers Relief Fund. It is a great organization, and I'm proud to be a part of that organization and have been for a long time. And we've got some great news. Find out what that great news is by going to RedEyeRadioShow.com, click on demand, and check out the Extra Mile podcast, RedEyeRadioShow.com.
My apologies for evolving Andrew Johnson into Andrew Jackson.
I didn't even catch that. We had a nice listener that corrected us, right?
Oh, no. He was, he was Ben Carson, me.
Oh.
He was just,
Okay.
He was very, very
angry? Very
angry that I started out by saying Andrew Johnson and then evolved it into Andrew Jackson was impeached.
Okay.
Where, of course, it was Andrew Johnson.
Yeah.
Which I said to begin with, and then...
Yeah, you said that at the beginning of the show, right?
I knew it was not Andrew Jackson. It was a slip of the tongue.
Right. But LaToya Jackson, she was impeached.
Yes, it was LaToya. Yes. No, the listener is very upset at me.
Okay.
Very upset.
Well, we hope that you will become less upset. What I'm trying to say is get over it. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Apologies to any descendants of Andrew Jackson. Sorry. In the world of 23andMe, I have to say that, right?
Well, since I was attacked viciously on it, just have to mention that the whole thing with Ben Carson testifying and didn't know some of the acronyms of some of the issues that they were talking about, and so he was insulted as being one of the dumb people of the Trump administration and everything else. Guy who's a brain surgeon.
Yeah,
it's racist.
It is.
They don't like to see, the Democrats don't like to see an intelligent black man, and so they will do anything to embarrass and marginalize a black man who happens to be more conservative.
Hillary didn't know what C stood for, but that was okay.
Yes. Hillary didn't know what C stood for in a classified document.
Right.
And so
she thought it was Bill's grade in law school, but
I want to go to this audio cut from Bret Baier and Molly Hemingway yesterday, because it really sort of backs up what's going on with the Democrats right down. Really, within a minute, Molly Hemingway just sets everything out. A couple of things that we have said, but sets out exactly what's going on here. Here we go.
Different sides of this, and we're back with the panel. Molly, after this meeting this morning with House Democratic Caucus, Nancy Pelosi came out and said essentially they're not going down the impeachment road. They're going to continue the investigations. And then after the Rose Garden, she gave what she just said there, suggesting, well, maybe we are.
Right. It was interesting to watch both of those people. Adam Schiff is someone who claimed in the previous 2 years that he had evidence of treasonous collusion with Russia to steal the 2016 election, which obviously is not true, because we just finished the Mueller report, and Mueller, who had all the same capabilities and more than Adam Schiff, did not find treasonous collusion. You have Nancy Pelosi claiming that the obstruction is right in front of us and you can see it with your own eyes. And I think what they're really trying to say is, we're very frustrated that Donald Trump is president, and we really wish he were not president. And we really have an angry base who would very much like to see him go. That's fine. Impeachment is a political process. If they think they have a political case to make for removing him, they should go forth with that. But really, this is a difficult situation for them, because they have a base that got whipped up into a frenzy through false reports that they participated in, and now they're wondering what happened. They put all their cards on this Mueller probe and came up with nothing, and it's very difficult for them to deal with.
Right there.
Yep. I think that was lined out beautifully. She noted, and thank you, Molly, for listening to Red Eye Radio. But she noted the same thing we did, that is Adam Schiff has been clearly lying about seeing evidence,
for over a year,
for well over a year now, and of course the Mueller report brought that to light. But it is an act of desperation. It really is. This is something where I can see something like this potentially being the end of the confidence in a Nancy Pelosi in terms of being Speaker. If the Democrats were to hold the House next year, I could see the party going a different direction for Speaker. Because I just don't see this. I agree. First of all, because she hesitated. So the far left has been, AOC the other day. Look, they all say it's political, but even from the other side, and she's talking about Nancy, it's also political when you don't move toward impeachment. And I don't think that had the bearing as much as, and it was part of it, but it's also what happened in the Rose Garden. It's funny because Molly tweeted yesterday, being off Twitter, as much, lately she hasn't been on Twitter a lot, apparently. And she says, not being on Twitter as much means I miss things like today's Rose Garden stuff. She goes, man, I need to be on Twitter more. And that was her whole tweet. But the point was that whole Rose Garden gauntlet that the president threw down. That was, Nancy's answer. This is Nancy's answer. And it comes from a couple of things. Again, it is in part the pressure coming from the party, but it's also the president throwing down, and now knowing that infrastructure likely isn't going to get done. I have to wonder if the president, not the president himself, but really knowing that infrastructure $2 trillion likely wasn't going to get past the Senate. I wonder if he looked at that and said, look, I can play this and say, man, I want infrastructure. I really want it. And he just might personally. But he knows that it's not going to happen. And he'd used that as the carrot. And they were buying into it and the conversation. Remember, that goes back to when they were talking about when they ended the government shutdown, the day they ended the government shutdown. He said, we had a conversation, Nancy and I had a conversation, had a lot of things, talked about some things that we agree on, including infrastructure. I'm not saying the president doesn't want it, but I'm saying the president likely knew it wasn't going to happen right now. But he was using it anyway. He was telling the Democrats,
I think we all knew. I think we all knew we weren't going to get an infrastructure plan through the Senate.
Not going to happen because you're not going to pay for it with a gas tax or fuel tax increase, and you're not going to spend $2 trillion right now and get it through the Senate.
And the White House backed off of the gas tax. So once they backed off the gas tax, we said that's a sign that it's not going to go anywhere, because if you're not, there's no way the Senate's going to say, oh, okay, $2 trillion. Yeah, okay, we'll just put it on we'll just add on over the next 10 years another $200 billion in debt. That was not going to happen in this Senate, so we knew it. But I think Mollie Hemingway has a great point when you think over the last 2 years and the frenzy that the Democratic leadership has whipped the rank and file and even members of Congress into. When you had, and I think it's very important that she led with that, when you have Adam Schiff saying that he saw the evidence of treasonous collusion with the Russians, and he's been saying it for over a year, day in and day out, it's there. All the networks covering it, Adam Schiff says it's there. And trying to make the case, but we can't say what it is because the Mueller investigation is going on, but you'll find out what it is. And then nothing. We jokingly have said over the last couple of days that Gerald Nadler should be calling Adam Schiff to testify, because it's Schiff that's the problem, because he said he has seen the collusion. He knows where the treasonous collusion is. He knows where Trump committed treason, and he won't tell anybody. Mm-hmm. Of course, we're joking because Adam Schiff was lying for over a year when he said he saw treasonous collusion. But they whipped the base and everybody up into the point where, as we said, over the last 2 years, we've seen the polls that are out there that shows the vast majority of Democrats believe that the Russians actually hacked into the election machines. Mm-hmm. There's never been a story stating that. But when you ask that question, and they did it in question form over and over again, the question became fact. Did Trump collude with the Russians to hack the election? Hack the election meant hacking the actual election machines. And so they kept repeating it over and over again, and that question became fact in the minds of Democrats across the country. The polling shows it. We're not making this up. The polling showed it over the last 2 years.
Yep.
And so they were sold this over and over again by their leadership, to the point of, not the point of, okay, we're going down this road to see if any wrongdoing was, happened. It was Adam Schiff saying, I have seen the law breaking. I have seen the treasonous collusion. The collusion does exist with this president. He colluded with the Russians. It was treasonous collusion over and over and over and over again. And he was lying.
Right.
So you have the leadership of the Democrats lying over and over again. That's what gets you to this point.
Well, okay, so the question is, did they paint themselves into a corner?
Yeah.
Did they build something so big that the only way to go here is impeachment, knowing that there's not going to be any movement from it in the Senate, which means he's still going to be president, and we get all the way to impeachment, and we can carry that flag because we finished the job?
You know something? I I start out the show saying we have to be careful not to believe that they think our way. And I've said that probably some of the Democrats are out there thinking to themselves, we better get ahead of this because it's going to be a mass disaster when the Inspector General's report comes out, which could be any day now.
Right.
And everything comes out from William Barr. And then I just rethought that. I said, wait a minute, that's how I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. They might not even be thinking that way. They're just enraged in general because of the Mueller report. They're not looking at this in any critical thinking way. Right. They're not even looking. Now, I know somebody in the Democrat Party probably is, but the majority probably not. They're still just probably enraged that they didn't get what they want on the Mueller report, and they were told by their own leaders over and over again that the treasonous collusion existed. And it did.
Right.
By the way, the next demonization will be Mueller if he doesn't testify in public, will be demonized.
Yes.
He will be the next person. We're going to forget about Barr, then we go right to Mueller. Mueller was the wrong person to pick. Mueller colluded with Trump not to do. I bet you that comes out in the next month.
Well, look at Rosenstein. You know, Rosenstein make him out to be the bad guy. He's the one that assigned Mueller, and Rosenstein clearly standing with Barr, so we know where he is
exactly.
in all this, right?
Yep. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE.
This hour for Freightliner, run smart, helping you run more efficiently is Freightliner's #1 goal.
Interesting, Alan Dershowitz, not a Trump supporter, but somebody who is a constitutional law professor and looks at the Constitution and looks at what's going on the last couple of days, and the Democrats and their congressional investigations and hearings, and saying this almost mirrors McCarthy. Because you look at what they're claiming, everything that they're claiming, and even talks about the one judge and him saying, yeah, the congressional committees can go on and investigate the president. He said that could have been a right-wing judge from the 1950s. Right. That what's going on right now is the abuse of congressional power. We'll get to some of the things that he said coming up here in just a little bit, plus your calls and comments. Andy, Joshua, Mark, and more. Will the Democrats go down the path to impeach the president after yesterday's zoo on Capitol Hill and at the White House?
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Pilot Flying J Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the world and America, 866-90-RED-EYE. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. And Eric, we're covering the breaking news out of Jefferson City. Apparently a massive tornado.
Yeah, they're calling it. It was a very active day weather-wise for the last 3 to 4 days in this region, going from the Texas Panhandle through Oklahoma and into Missouri, has been extremely active tornado-wise. In fact, there were, according to reports, 22 different reports of tornadoes by late Wednesday evening. But it was just minutes before we went on the air, they had a confirmed monster tornado hit Jefferson City. They say that happened at 11:47 p.m., and they were, in fact, the National Weather Service warning residents in that area to take shelter. Again, this was a little over 2 hours ago there in Jefferson City. Now, this came on the 8th anniversary of the Joplin tornado, which hit back in 2011. I have friends who actually survived that tornado. So there were other reports of tornadoes again in that region, including one that was not far from Joplin. And there were the National Weather Service, again, receiving 22 reports of tornadoes by late Wednesday evening. And they're also saying that there were 3 deaths in Golden City, the Golden City area of Barton County, and several injuries in Carl Junction and in Jasper County from tornado that hit Joplin. But again, what they're calling a monster tornado hitting Jefferson City just before midnight.
A wedge tornado where the base is
the funnel.
The funnel.
Yeah, the funnel itself, which is very interesting. The funnel itself is wider than it is tall.
Wow.
That is monstrous.
From Fox News, Jefferson City, the capital of Missouri, has taken a direct hit from a tornado and suffered possibly, quote, catastrophic damage, according to reports. According to the National Weather Service, a confirmed large and destructive tornado was observed over Jefferson City late last night, moving northeast at 40 miles an hour. The twister appeared to have traveled through the center part of town, the Jefferson City News Tribune reported. Quote, we are currently identifying the location and damages and searching for injured residents. Lieutenant David Williams of the city's police department said in a statement to the News Tribune, the primary need at this time is for those not affected to stay clear of the impacted areas so that emergency personnel can assist those in need. End of quote. The Missouri Department of Public Safety reported extensive damage along Ellis Boulevard near Highway 54 and warned of downed power lines. Authorities warned residents that all down lines should be considered live. They advised people to stay away from areas that have experienced damage. And apparently also stating that here it is, major tornadoes across the state. We're doing okay, but praying that those that were caught in the damage, some are still trapped. Local emergency crews are on site and assisting. So that's what we have right now, and we'll keep you updated on that. But apparently, they said debris thrown 13,000 feet into the atmosphere.
Yeah, more than 130 reports of tornadoes in 5 days in this region. Extremely active season. You know, we went from, it was a couple of weeks ago tomorrow, where we had a high temperature, this odd cool front that came in. We had a high temperature somewhere around 70, but an overnight low around, 49, 50, depending on where you were, which is cold for us this time of year. But we went to very quickly went back to the summer, humid, unstable air in our area here in the North Texas area. And we've had our share of storms and rain. But, of course, again, stretching from the panhandle of Texas and northern Texas going through Oklahoma, this system has moved kind of in a diagonal fashion, as it often does, going from west to east and now affecting yesterday Missouri. Again, going back 8 years, Joplin, Missouri, no stranger to tornadoes and the kind of damage that it can do. It was one of the costliest tornadoes in history, in fact, and very deadly. I was there a year after on the anniversary, and in 2012, and you look at a community that is still today, 8 years later, in some respects, still rebuilding. Mm-hmm. And so our thoughts and prayers are with all of those affected by these recent tornadoes in recent days.
Getting back to what happened yesterday, and a lot of people question, is it the point of no return? I mean, is this where the Democrats are going to go down the impeachment path? We've had quite a discussion on it the first couple of hours. Your calls and comments coming up. Just want to read a couple of paragraphs from Alan Dershowitz's column in The Hill, where he talked about the fact that what's going on right now is a reverse. It's just the Democrats doing what was done in the 1950s during the McCarthy hearings. He said it's quite fair to say that back in the day, virtually all liberals and civil libertarians led by the American Civil Liberties Union wanted to impose restrictions on the power of Congress to investigate, subpoena, and question individuals for partisan or ideological purposes. Now the shoe is on the other foot. It is the Democrats who are abusing their congressional investigations for partisan and ideological purposes. It is the Democrats who are putting forward the phony arguments about legislative purposes, such as the need for new laws and congressional oversight. It is the Democrats in the House who are determined to misuse their legislative power to gain advantages in the upcoming elections. Now it is the Republicans who are crying foul and who are claiming that the Democrats are abusing the power of congressional committees that they control. However, no one should be surprised by this shift in attitudes because most people, especially politicians, believe in due process for me, but not thee. Very few citizens advocate neutral rights for all. We do. The decision by Judge Emmett Matad to authorize broad congressional investigations in the Trump administration and President Trump himself, going back to well before he was a presidential candidate, could easily have been written by a right-wing judge in the 1950s during the McCarthy hearings. It swallows whole hog the claimed legitimate legislative purposes put forward by those committees, now led by Democrats. It goes even further and suggests that a court has no power to probe the real motives behind legislative investigations so long as the claimed motives are plausible. Under this decision that goes against civil liberties, Congress could investigate any person for any reason as long as it pretends to be doing so for a legitimate legislative purpose. The decision is an open invitation for abuse of power. During the 1950s, a good old ACLU would be in court challenging abuses of congressional investigatory power, but the current ACLU has one dominant agenda, which is to oppose Trump regardless of the means used and to raise large sums of money based on this agenda. So the ACLU will not side with Trump in court. It will never side with Trump in court, regardless of how abusive congressional committees may become and regardless of how many rights are violated. The ACLU is now part of the problem, not part of the solution for this rampant abuse of civil liberties. Among the most important roles of the federal courts is to serve as a check and balance on the excesses of the other branches of government, including the legislature. The court should not look beneath the claimed justifications for investigation of individuals and decide whether these justifications represent the real reason behind the issuance of subpoenas and other excesses of congressional power. There should be a balancing test to weigh the legitimate interest of Congress against the rights of those targeted in its investigations. Congress should not be given carte blanche, as the decision by Judge Matad gives it, to investigate anyone or anything for any purpose, as long as a committee chairman can recite the correct words as purported justifications for their actions. Meaning you just can't say it. You can't say, well, we believe we're doing it for legit purposes because we believe the guy might be a criminal. No, that's not good enough. And because of it, it may change legislation down the road.
Right.
Because that's what's going on here. I believe it will be overturned when you get to a higher court. I believe Trump will eventually win on this because Congress is just, and you know, when we look at McCarthy, just pulling people in and asking them questions about whether they wouldn't be allowed today at all. You can't get away with that.
No.
You can't sit there and go on a fishing. Congress cannot go on a fishing expedition of anybody. They can't just, their investigatory power, their congressional subpoenas does not mean that they can say, all right, I wish to go into Joe Schmo's background records and check everything to see if there's something there that might be illegal, which means we would have to change federal legislation down the road. Well, as long as you're stating that there's a legislative purpose to it, well, then you can go ahead with it because we believe what you say. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a couple of things. I think the left has painted themselves into the corner. But here's my question: who's painting leadership into the corner? It's the far left. In terms of this whole thing, the pressure's coming from the far left. It wasn't coming from Nancy going the other direction. They're leading the party. The far left is leading the party. How do you win a presidential election with Joe Biden with that kind of, leadership? I mean, the real leadership is the AOC wing of the party right now.
You're right. Yep.
And that's the question we've had all along. How do you get there? AOC is, I don't know, she's on Bernie's team as far as we know. That's the closest we can, but Biden right now is the guy. I know that can change. We're early in the game. But if he's to become, again, if he's going through this process, he's not going to get past the far left. How does a Biden win the primary?
Well, let me ask you this question here, because you think about the far left, which I'm sure is thinking how they can win this election, and even though a lot of them probably would just prefer to vote for a candidate who can't win, I wonder how many in the radical left are saying, "Look, Biden will be our puppet." Look, Biden's not saying anything right now because Biden is waiting for us to tell him what he has to do as president of the United States.
Right.
That's why Biden isn't giving any opinions, because he's waiting to see where his party is going. Let's show him where the party is going. And if he wishes to be elected, that he must abide by what we say, and he must think our way. I wonder how many on the radical left looked at Biden and say, look, since he's got a big lead, maybe we can use him as our puppet.
Right.
Maybe Biden can be the puppet for the far left.
Because if they can make Nancy the puppet,
as they are,
yep,
Nancy's become a puppet.
Then why not Joe? Well, in fact, likely it would be easier with Joe. And Joe could soft sell it to the center. Oh, don't worry about this. I mean, we'll be able to pay for everybody's health care, $2,400 a month, and you're free everything. Don't worry about that. Then he'll just wave with a
Joe,
big,
I did notice a slight hesitation there.
Right. I may have thrown up a little bit. Yeah.
All right, your calls and comments coming up here. 866.
Gary, coming up here in just a few minutes, meteorologist John Trout's going to have the latest on the Jefferson City tornado, all the Missouri tornadoes. And by the way, we're also looking to hear from officials there in central Missouri. They have planned a press conference that was supposed to happen at 2 a.m. We're trying to get hold of somebody who's carrying that, and we'll get that information, whatever information they're passing along to the public. And by the way, those officials there in those counties affected are saying that all hospitals are in disaster mode. So we'll talk to John Trout coming up next.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Welcome and good morning.
All right, Gary, the breaking news, Missouri being hit hard late Wednesday, including a tornado that has hit the capital there, Jefferson City, Missouri. Coming up in just a few minutes, we're going to hear from meteorologist John Trout, and he's going to get us all the latest information. He has a guest on as well. That's going to bring us some of the latest there from, again, Jefferson City, Missouri. Late reports coming in just before midnight, a massive tornado, what they call a wedge tornado, where the funnel itself is actually wider than it is tall, being reported in extensive damage in that area. Officials are updating the media as we speak. We're going to get the latest from them coming up as soon as it's made available to us as well. We'll talk with John here in just a moment. We'll get his report in just a few minutes.
Let's go to Ken in Indiana about going down the impeachment road. Ken, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I don't think the Democrats are actually going to impeach Trump, but they will open an impeachment inquiry. because, the Mueller report's a lot more politically damaging than the president or Barr would like to acknowledge. The Democrats would like to feed it to, American people. Most people aren't going to read it. They'd like to feed it to the American people bit by bit every day.
I don't. What part of it? Then why aren't they using that political part of the Mueller investigation to go after Trump now?
Oh, they are.
Where?
I mean, if you listen to the congressional leaders, they're all screaming obstruction of justice. Which
we know it's in the Mueller report. Tell me the specifics that they're hitting. They're not. What they're hitting is the fact that
obstruction of justice.
We know what that is.
There were like 100 prosecutors signed off on a letter saying that they found ample evidence of obstruction of justice.
Well, no, we know what the argument is. They're not having that argument. You're not hearing that argument being had right now by Democrats. Because they're not. They're talking about the fact that he will not let that Barr will not testify. These are the points the Democrats are bringing up. Barr won't testify. Hope Hicks won't testify. That the president is trying to keep his inner circle from testifying. That there's a cover-up, but nobody's talking about what the cover-up is. The obstruction of justice. We know exactly what the arguments are on obstruction of justice. They've been there since day one, and they're not using that as the major point.
No, they're saying cover-up now,
right?
Based on the non-response to the subpoenas.
Right. The obstruction of justice, again, when they do talk about it, as they did the other day, they bring up the fact, well, there doesn't have to be an underlying crime. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever said that.
All right, here, let's get an update from meteorologist John Trout on the deadly tornadoes.
Late Wednesday into early Thursday, we have reports of a tornado that hit Jefferson City, Missouri. We have meteorologist Liz Lightman from the Storm Prediction Center to tell us more.
We did have a tornado move through parts of Jefferson City, Missouri. Pretty extensive damage to houses. The school was apparently damaged. Trees, power lines are down. I haven't heard anything as far as fatalities, but it looks like the Missouri Highway Patrol did report multiple injuries.
Missouri particularly hard hit yesterday, late into the evening. What about Joplin? What have you heard about the tornado that may have gone through that region?
I believe in Golden City we did have some fatalities, structural damage in both locations, and it looks like a pretty extensive large tornado there as well.
There's meteorologist Liz Lightman for Red Eye Radio. I'm meteorologist John Trout.
Loaded for Bear, Gary McNamara and Eric Harley on Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. To the last caller, look, eventually in the hearings, the Democrats might try to make the case for obstruction. That's not the case that they're making. That's not the case that they made yesterday. Nancy Pelosi was precisely on the fact that if Trump needs to be impeached, it is about the fact that he refuses to cooperate.
Yep. They're shouting cover-up, not obstruction.
Right. It said, let me get here. The strategic model, this is from thehill.com, not a conservative website. The strategic model was on clear display Wednesday when Pelosi, after leading the closed-door meeting that threw cold water on impeachment, went immediately to the microphone and accused Trump of having engaged in a cover-up. She was referring to the administration's near-blanket refusal to cooperate with a long list of Democratic investigations. The last person to bring up the obstruction of justice was Amash on earlier this week when he brought up the obstruction of justice and tried to make the point that, well, you can have obstruction of justice even if there's not an underlying crime, which we stated, yeah, but you can't make that case because that's not the case that the critics of those who are claiming obstruction of justice are making. It's not just whether there's an underlying crime. Now, that is a part of it, because if there isn't an underlying crime, and by the way, as we said before, what is being missed completely by Democrats is this isn't a case where there was a crime and you couldn't prove that somebody actually committed the crime, but they tried to obstruct justice. There was no underlying crime ever.
Right.
There was just a general allegation question. Did Trump collude with the Russians to hack the election?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no even underlying crime to begin with. It wasn't that you couldn't find that he was guilty. There was no underlying crime, and there was no law breaking by the president to try to stop the investigation or obstruct the investigation. He never committed any crime in doing so. He didn't bribe anybody. He didn't destroy any evidence. Nobody ever made the case it is just for an underlying crime. As we have stated, it's both. If they wish to make that argument, fine, they can go and do that. But if you're saying, because you seem to believe that there are liberal prosecutors who hate Trump that said clearly there's obstruction, well, then you're telling me that they're going to go down that path and then balk and say, okay, the president clearly committed obstruction, but we're not going to file impeachment at this point?
Yeah, right.
So it doesn't make any sense what you're saying, but that's not what the Democrats have been using. That's not inside what they're talking. What they're talking about is he won't cooperate with the other investigations. And since he won't cooperate, since he won't agree to follow their subpoenas, that he should be impeached for that. That's the road that they're going down right now.
Yes.
Not that they probably would bring up obstruction. That's not the major point that they're bringing to start this process. But then the caller said, but they're never going to go through with it. Well, you're telling me they're going to go through the hearings and everything else and then come out with a clear if they come out, what they're going to do, they're going to exonerate him? Sorry, Trump, we've done the impeachment investigation. Trump is cleared.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No, they're going to come out and they're going to say Trump is guilty of, and if we'll use your point, Trump is guilty of contempt of Congress. Trump is guilty of collusion. Trump is guilty of obstruction of justice. But after these 3 months of having all of these hearings, we are not going to impeach or have a vote to impeach.
Yeah, we're not going to do anything about it. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Good luck with that one.
Not going to happen. And again, it comes down to the will of the Claire McCaskill Democrats in the House. We're going to call them that. That's what it comes down to on the vote. Because if your soft head count still isn't at that, 218 mark right now, if it's nowhere close, you can't move on it. You have to stop talking about it. You have to shut it down. Don't say impeachment again. But if you think, if they're at, let's say they're at 195, 200, and they think they can get, we know at least one Republican on board. So you're going to have, if they believe they're going to be at 218, then they'll go. That's the way it'll happen.
As we said with Representative Amash from Michigan, he was making a point that the critics aren't making. He's making a point that his opposition isn't making. Right. The Republican who said, well, clear this obstruction because you just don't need an underlying crime. That wasn't the argument.
Right.
The argument wasn't just an underlying crime. It's that you have to commit another crime even to protect. You either have to commit a crime to obstruct the underlying crime or commit a crime to obstruct the non-underlying crime. the no underlying crime. Mm-hmm. And if you're stating that a president did not break the law, anything that he did was within his constitutional duties, that was obstructing a crime that has never been committed, I don't care whether you find 400 prosecutors who believe that should be obstruction.
Oh, I know there are plenty of liberal prosecutors.
Right. Well, that doesn't. What that does is make me worry about prosecutors in the United States wishing to make law and prosecute things that aren't against the law.
Right. They're all for letting celebrities go in Chicago.
Exactly.
After pulling off a massive hoax and causing damage, monetary damage to the police department and investigators, to the city of Chicago. Yeah, we know how it gets. We know what prosecutors are like. By the way, prosecutors are elected officials.
In the entire equation, though, if there is no underlying crime, that does matter.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't the sole determination, but the fact is it does lead you to intent.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an intent to obstruct when you know? And this is the thing about the Mueller investigation. As they said, there was not just no illegal collusion. There was no collusion. They didn't cooperate to do anything, even if it was legal. So the fact is you have nothing there, which means the intent was never to obstruct.
Right.
You can't even make that case that the intent of the president was to obstruct, which even if you can, that would be a thought crime that you're punishing, not a behavioral crime.
What he was thinking.
Right. Not a behavioral crime of doing something wrong to obstruct. But what you're saying is if he thinks to obstruct, even if he's not breaking the law, the thought itself is a crime, which, again, Jonathan Turley and Dershowitz, both non-Trump supporters, have made when it comes to obstruction of justice. And so they're not there. But that's not the case. That may be what you're thinking. That isn't the case the Democrats have made this week for impeachment.
No. And it likely isn't the case. Why? Because they know they can't make the case on that. They're going to make it look like something still that it's not, but they're not going to go down that road. What they'll go down is, well, they didn't answer our subpoenas. We subpoenaed them, and they didn't show.
Right.
This is a clear cover-up. They'll throw words out, but they're not going to go through that process because that process would require them to find something. So they're going to find nothing. The only tangible thing they have, and this will go back on, again, let's remind ourselves how many people are aware of the fact that we have 3 branches of government and can name at least 2 of those 3 branches. But they'll throw down the whole subpoena thing as if, because Nadler will have you believe he can change the laws by issuing a subpoena, that he can change the rules, that he can compel a sitting attorney general to break the law by answering that subpoena to the fullest of its requests.
Well, you know something, that is a great indication. If you want an indication, if you're wondering where to go, if you're sitting there, I really don't know where to stand on this. Understand, remember that the Democrats when confirming William Barr asked him, in order to get, their confirmation, ask him if he would be willing to break the law. And again, part of their demands is for him to break the law.
Yeah.
By releasing grand jury testimony. And so that if you wish to understand where it comes to the abuse of Congress, where it all started, how you can see the line of the abuse of the congressional subpoena power, you can see it right there in what their demands are. Their demands was for the Attorney General to break the law. Mm-hmm. That's really amazing. I don't know. I'm trying to think of it. Number one, for confirmation, they were asking him to break the law. And then when they subpoenaed him, it was also to break the law. When they wished him to, testify, part of the demands was that you redact the entire Mueller report. I can't do that.
Right.
Make that public. Let us head to you. We go with Joshua in Knoxville, Tennessee. Joshua, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Hey, I just wanted to tell you guys, I think you're looking at this whole impeachment proceedings wrong. if you look at it from the standpoint of the liberals, they're always playing the victim. And that's their trump card. Anytime that they get into an argument, they're playing a victim. We're either being racist against them, we're being homophobic, sexist, you name it, we are it. Now, if they proceed with this impeachment process, it takes away one of their cards that they have up their sleeves. Right now, they're still able to play the victim. If they proceed with the impeachment process, it can actually make it so Trump can turn around and say, hey, they're finally attacking me. They know there's no evidence, and they're proceeding.
Well, he's making that case. He's making that case now, and it doesn't seem to bother them. The Mueller report. The Mueller report had nothing in it. Trump is going around saying, "Look, I've been a victim of a witch hunt." That doesn't seem to be stopping the Democrats.
Right, but once they. All
right, I guess the silence made my point.
Well,
you're saying that they don't want to make Trump a victim. They believe they can go after Trump and be wrong, and they don't believe that the public views him or any Democrat views him as a victim.
If they move forward with it, they see it as a victory. They see it as following through. Look, they have painted themselves into a corner. They either shut up and move on after all of this, or they go forward with impeachment, which is the fullest measure possible in this entire scenario.
Right. If no matter what happens, if they find nothing on Trump, they'll still say anything that he does. If they find nothing, they'll say because Trump's hiding it. Look, Trump's been saying he's a victim for 2 years. Mm-hmm. That hasn't stopped the Democrats.
Right.
They're not saying, "Oh, Trump's saying he's a victim. We better not go any further because we don't want Trump to be perceived as a victim." That's not worried them at all. So, I mean, I disagree with your analysis on that.
Well, it's very clear that the fact of the matter is you don't even have to look too far to see that the president really is the victim here.
Yes, he is.
He doesn't play a victim very well. He certainly again acknowledges what this has been, which has been a massive witch hunt. It still continues today. The impeachment will be on what we have seen from Nadler. It'll be on not responding to the subpoenas. It's a cover-up. They're hiding. That's what they're saying.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE. I think that the one thing, because people seem to be focusing on whether there'll be an impeachment vote or not. I don't think that's the point. I think the point is, after yesterday, what other road do you go down? And once you start going down the road, once you have Nancy Pelosi, because as reading here straight from The Hill, the strategic model was on clear display Wednesday when Pelosi, after leading the closed-door meeting that threw cold water on impeachment, went immediately to the microphone and accused Trump of having engaged in a cover-up. She was referring to the administration's near-blanket refusal to cooperate in a long list of Democratic investigations. Hours later, interviewed at the Center for American Progress event, she amplified the charge, adding that it could be an impeachable offense for refusal to cooperate with the Democrat investigations. Well, where do you go from that point? How do you backtrack now? You know, that's the whole point. Once you start going down this road, and we're much further down this road than we were 2 weeks ago, well, how did they back it up now? How do they go in reverse? I don't know.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.